Processing breeding database. Hello.
Protecting Zuldazar is our top priority. We cannot allow the Alliance to encroach upon the city. Push them back to their boots.
Okay, I'm trying to get this presenter thing set up. Okay. Oh, Discord doesn't know that Google Docs isn't a game. Hang on.
Are you gonna stream it?
Of course. Hang on, I think that's the wrong window though.
What is this?
Oh, it
Oh,
is.
I
Hang
can't
on.
wait.
Oh, quick, not that tab. Not that tab.
Let's try this again.
So where are we supposed to see this?
If you
Click on the live button
thing.
and join stream. Wake the city up too. Oh.
No. I'll post it after.
He doesn't want any people.
Can't read ahead.
I don't want spoilers if I can help it.
Yes, I normally always I normally always read the last page of a book before the rest of it.
All right. Well, we will go ahead and get started. Let me alt tab to my notes. Here we go. So, this is the raid review for Ny'alotha, the Waking City. As you can clearly see from the description. You notice the guy on the right is mirrored? His Adidas is backwards. Anyways, moving on.
Very
So first we'll go over the survey results. This is the role breakdown in raid. We've got a little more range than melee. Compared to last tier, we gained a few ranged and we lost some healers comparatively percentage-wise. So we go back. Healers went from 16 to 20, ranged went from 42 to 30. So it's a bit of a gain in both in ranged and a bit of a loss in healers. And then what people thought that they could do with the whole raid group of just themselves. This tier, the majority of people said heroic, clear heroic, and a few mythic. Some people thought more than half of mythic. A few people are cutting edge people apparently. But compared to last tier, we actually had a significant improvement because most people, there weren't as many people who thought that they could do more of mythic, right? Most people were just like clear heroic and then move on. But if you compare that, we gained this purple slice that thought that they could do more than half of mythic, and we gained the cutting edge people versus last time I think there was only one person in each of those two categories. So moving on,
Does that mean we got more delusional?
Perhaps.
I think
it's
so.
possible.
I blame Ny'alotha.
Yep, it's clearly.
Yeah.
That's true. You have the whole rest of the expansion to try to achieve these goals. So if you think you could get cutting edge in the next couple months.
Couple months.
So now, how much do you think you've improved? It's basically the same as last year. Most people put themselves at slight improvement. Last year it was same. Most people picked 4, and I think a few people picked some of the outliers kind of convert, or some of the outliers kind of flattened out. So there were some people who thought, one person who thought they improved a lot, one person who thought they improved not at all, or regressed a lot. Maybe people didn't read the question, but most people are picking slight improvement consistently every tier. Maybe you're just being lazy.
It's because you should have one that says neither. So you either have to pick 3 or 4.
But then everybody picks it.
And then
and that's why
obviously the selection is 4.
I see. Well, it doesn't seem to have changed. What group members perform the best as a total unit? It seems to be tanks and healers favored, but it's actually much less skewed than last expansion or last tier where it was 90% tanks, 10% healers. It seems like the healers have gained some share, and the DPS have also gained some share at the expense of the tanks. Maybe because we have different tanks this tier.
Yeah. JKN.
I wouldn't want to mention any specific ones by name.
I regressed horribly. I understand.
It's definitely Brasma's.
All
I
your fault.
apologize.
You guys are fucking mean.
All right, so going on, most people want
Zutter.
most people want elite ranged and a couple healers. That seems to be basically the same. Last year it was mostly ranged and melee and healer. So it seems like our biggest need is still range perception wise. No surprise there. How satisfied were we with the group's rate of progression? Most people were pretty happy. 4, 5, 6 is pretty high, and compared to last year, it's actually better. I think we had more people, threes and 4s last year, and fewer 5s. So it seems like people were more happy with how fast we were progressing, which makes sense since we were faster this tier.
It seemed like it was a lot faster this time around.
Could also be because the raid might be easier, but we'll see.
I don't think so. I think it's because we got better.
And so common cause of wipes, a large majority of people picked unique encounter mechanics.
I wonder
Shocking.
why that is.
One particular one.
And then the others were avoidable damage and lack of damage throughput, and then some other ones. If you compare to last tier, our last tier was still unique encounter mechanics #1, but the share went from like half to
honestly don't remember a single. I'm not saying anyone answer that is like wrong, but I can't remember a single time that we wiped due to like not meeting a damage timer. I don't know. Maybe there's.
We wiped on Il'gynoth like one time. We hit in rage.
Well, I think
I guess that's true.
when we did normal, like for example, the first couple of times maybe when we were doing the hive mind boss, like the little shit ads weren't done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's more
But
that
that was-
like the fight would have gone a lot better, and we would have had to
Yes.
deal with fewer of those
That's
unique
true.
mechanics if we'd had higher damage.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. But that was, I mean, the first time we did it.
Yeah, it's less like berserk timers and more like
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you weren't killing this ad fast enough for like
It's
such
true.
and
I guess
such.
high mind that was an issue for a couple pulls. That's fair.
And like Rawden getting an extra one of the void crash or void stack things if we kill it faster.
Did
But
we have
avoidable
much
damage
higher
went down.
avoidable damage the previous tier?
Yes, we went from 7 to 2 avoidable damage. So people seem to feel like avoidable damage was less of a concern this tier, relatively speaking, maybe compared to the unique mechanics. How much communication do you like to see? Oops. So this tier, people wanted slightly more or slightly less. It looks like people are generally happy where it is right now. Compared to last year, they were also generally happy, but maybe wanted slightly less. So we're kind of hovering around, I think, where people are satisfied, with a few outliers. Least favorite boss for progression, not for farm. And it was roughly 50-50 with Il'gynoth, Zanesh, and then the rest of people were kind of split between individual bosses. I don't think any other boss got more than one vote. So cool. So for the laissez-faire raid leadership, basically 17 of 19 people said something along the lines of something positive, and nobody said anything negative. It was either positive or neutral. And particularly, people pointed out that normal went a lot faster and a lot smoother without having the explanations that weren't really necessary for that difficulty, since we could kind of brute force it. But it also seems like people didn't individually really step up and do research on their own. We just kind of, fumbled through it and managed to do it in time. and maybe a little too much fun in the last couple weeks.
Too much
Let's see.
fun.
It is the name of the raid group. And then a note that pulling faster was good, but it was interrupting summons sometimes, and that was causing some hiccups. And
Did I write that?
I don't remember.
I don't either.
All anonymous. We protect confidentiality.
I
here.
might have written that, or maybe it was
Yeah.
Kel's.
But now we also noticed that less time explaining the strategy or the boss mechanics is good, but it's still important to have a clear strategy that everybody's following so that we don't all read different guides and then all try to execute different strategies, particularly on the harder bosses. And that's more relevant on heroic than it is on normal. So moving on, any questions about the raid section? No? All right. So moving on to Mythic Plus. Our participation, we had about 2/3 of people who came almost every week and 1/3 of the people who didn't really do it at all. Compared to last year, we actually had less like participation from every week people. So it seems like more people either ran separately or, well, we'll find out. Either they didn't run at all or ran separately. So the role breakdown is basically the same as last year, I think. Half ranged melee, some tanks and some healers. Compared to last year, it looks like we had more tanks. Yeah, it looks like we lost about a 5% share of tanks, and we gained a healer, or lost
Wonder
a
who
healer.
that could be.
But so the breakdown is roughly the same. Ideally, right, we would want, if we wanted balanced groups, we would have 20, 20, 60, right? Because it's 1, 3, and 1. So we're still a little bit skewed DPS, which makes sense because a raid is 2 tanks and a couple healers and the rest DPS. So it makes sense that we have more DPSers available. But people, I guess it also means that we didn't have like appropriately prepared off-spec tanks and healers that could do the.
I mean, I think the biggest change is I just didn't tank this time around because we never had like, if we ever would have had 3 healers on, I would have.
We didn't. Well, we had enough healers. It was just that we didn't have like 15 people to do 3 groups at once.
It was always 2 groups.
There's a
So
couple
we were hitting a little
weeks,
more than 10.
There was a couple weeks we probably could have done 3 groups with just like picking
With
up a
popping,
pugger or 2.
Yeah.
But like,
We don't
it
like
just seemed to work. It seemed to work easier with this because of the jump up this season to having to do 15s to get the max kind of level. It just felt like a better plan to do 2 groups and then maybe run a third one at the end. I don't know how you guys felt about that because like I know some people got shafted quite a bit having to wait for the second group, but I just felt like that was a better setup to have our dedicated tanks actually be the tanks instead of trying to run a group with me.
I think that's, yeah, you have to.
Yeah, for me it was a little tricky because I would have liked to tank occasionally, but I'm not going to start by tanking a 15. And we weren't doing a whole lot of 10s.
Yeah.
We may also want to prioritize. I don't know how much people care, but like for the East Coast people, prioritize doing them instead of just rolling
true,
like we did, which was
I didn't think about that, guys. So please let me know. That's not a consideration that I thought about. Just say something, and I will next time be like, can I please go first because of this? I absolutely will accommodate that. It wasn't me trying to like be a dick or anything like.
So that's the breakdown. Given a party of 5 players, what key do you think you could complete? 70% said 15 to 19, and 20% said 10 to 14. So nobody wants to do 20 pluses, even those cutting edge people apparently.
I didn't even put 20 plus on there.
Let's see. So compared to last year, actually, I think there was another increase in what you might call delusion, because last year most people said 10 to 14, and only 10% said 15, 19.
Because that's what we were doing, right?
Yeah, that's true. I think we pushed higher, so people got more confidence and thought that they knew it better. Because last year we were doing 10s, right?
Yeah.
So that was that. Motivation for attending, pretty flat. There's some people who don't really like attending, and a lot of people who really want to attend, and some people in the middle. It's not very polarized one way or the other, or even concentrated in the middle. Compared to last year, it's kind of flat either way, right? There's always a contingent that likes it and a contingent that doesn't like it. How much has knowledge and aptitude changed? Most people picked 4 probably because they didn't read the scale that said 1 was not at all, but that's what the results say. compared to last tier. I guess more people read the question and picked one when they should have done it, or maybe everybody thinks they improved 4 out of 6.
Yeah, come on, JKM.
This
People
sounds
think
like a
lot better.
problem with the question.
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say
You and your
that more
different
people
scales for different
more
questions,
people
even
thought
of the
they
same
improved.
kind.
I mean, I would say this affix is. I feel like that this affix was easier for the average person to understand. It's obviously, I think, a lot of this affix's difficulty, the specific seasonal affix, I mean, of course, falls on like the tanks
It's on the tank, whoever's planning
or
the run,
the
basically.
planning the run, and everyone else has to follow instructions. Whereas when it comes to like when it was enchanted, everybody had responsibilities they had to do in order to manage the mechanics. So that might be why that came out that way.
More people feel like they have aptitude for these mechanics, perhaps. So, anyways, that's that. People who ran outside the Tuesday group. So this actually went up significantly. So 80% of people ran Mythic Plus outside of the normal groups versus last year it was 50%. So it seems like more people were trying it on their own, which is good. Main reason for not running separately, it hasn't really changed. It's either time, don't like pugs, or score or not needing gear. And that if you compare to last year, it's basically the same. There wasn't much change there. Least favorite affix. So the two big ones here are bursting and grievous, and then this dark blue is quaking, and the green one is bolstering. So those 4 kind of take up the vast majority. And compared to last, sorry,
I just want to note
didn't
you're
see-
missing explosive.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
was going to say
actually my least
explosive would have been my
favorite.
choice.
all
And
right.
Quaking got a lot easier because they nerfed it.
Yeah, Quaking
But-
was easy.
Compared to
I will say-
last tier, it's the same 4, right? On
You
both.
know, my assessment as the person running it and seeing everybody is the Grievous is by far the one that we had the most problem with. So I don't know if they've like overtuned it or whatever is going on with it. It just seems to be like the other ones didn't really. I think we handled most of it, the rest of it pretty
Grievous
easily.
is also the healer's problem, right?
Bursting, I mean, bursting occasionally would cause a wipe here and there, but I don't think it ever really cost keys. I do think Grievous does on a regular basis.
I think our healers were doing a better job than in previous seasons at handling the Grievous. Whereas the
No, it was
explosive,
harder this time.
well,
But you
well,
did a better
that's
job.
because we're doing higher level. But the explosive was devastating in some of those dungeons. Like Toldagor explosive is horrible.
But if
I
you
think you're
either
thinking about. Are you? Wait,
I know what I'm talking about.
the orbs, right?
the
Yeah,
explosive,
the
yeah.
exploding things.
I don't know.
we
The
killed
last
or
week
they-
we had explosive a couple weeks ago, and it was I don't know, it was very easy. But I mean, again, it's just I think there's only a couple that are really just tuned poorly,
think
and
they
need
tend to be-
fix. They need to fix some of them.
I think the explosives tend to be harder when the comp is range.
that's true. Yeah, it's much easier if you have a lot of melee who can just one shot them versus if you're ranged have to like switch and use 3 or 4 globals.
Oh, I just find the affix annoying. It's just.
It is annoying too. But basically, the
like
breakdown.
Well, I mean, I find bolstering personally the most annoying, but like as
Yeah.
far as actually causing like difficulties in completing and
Sure.
timing keys, I feel like Sanguine is far
But the
away.
question is least favorite and not the most
That's
difficult.
Oh,
That's true. I did read the question wrong then, I guess.
you're never interrupted.
Quaking?
Oh yeah.
Quaking, yeah,
I'm
Quaking's
sorry, I
just annoying.
forgot you're a monk.
Oh,
So
right.
you're always channeling shit, right?
Anyway, the breakdown of the top 4 didn't really change from tier to tier. I'll remember to add explosive next time, hopefully. But it's all opinions after all. Next expansion. So any questions about Mythic Plus stuff? Any unexpected results, or it all kind of made sense? There wasn't really much change other than participation, but it seems like people's opinions about difficulty and stuff didn't really change.
I'll do one last thing on Mythic Plus. So we obviously I don't know if we're gonna keep doing them. I'll probably keep doing them for the next couple weeks until we get a clear picture of what's gonna happen going on with the raid. But eventually, I will probably, guys, probably just shut it down for the tier since people are gonna, fade off anyway. My guess is I'll keep doing it for a couple weeks until we see where we're at. But just so you know, I probably will stop them at some point soon.
Yeah, the game reason, because we're now doing those 15 keys and they get 575 gear, or maybe it's 565 and 575 in the chest, is we're actually getting better than we can get in the raid and heroic in terms of item levels. So it's there is kind of a reason to keep doing them.
Again, it's less about giving people gear and more about like people.
Yeah, we're even doing like
overall
achievements
interest.
in raid or something. So
Yeah, like
who cares?
I mean, yeah, it's just more about people's overall interest in the game, and also my own personal interest in the game. I also need a break occasionally too.
We also
so
have to see how attendance works out.
Yeah.
Because you might just not have people, and you'll have to.
But
I know there are people in the other group who are interested in doing Mythic Plus too, so you can probably fill in with some of them and see if you can put together groups. But maybe
the problem is, I think we rated the exact same. They rated the exact same
yeah,
time.
that's true. But if we don't have the official Tuesday one anymore, and we just kind of make it a free for all, then you can run it on Fridays and Thursdays and Saturdays, or well, Thursday's raid day, so don't do it on Thursday, but Sundays and Mondays. Anyway.
One little kudo for the group is, when the question was, do you run ones outside of the guild? And I have been doing that on my warlock in another guild, and that guild is having a challenge doing 10s, and we're blowing through 13 to 15s and 16s. So we are actually, as a guild, really good at Mythic Plus.
Really good.
Pat yourselves on the back. We did it.
Throw some confetti. Anyway, next expansion. So this was all kind of tentative, and obviously none of it's binding, but you can, it's just gauging some interest of what people were thinking. What people want to play. It's looking like we have, what if we were to do 20 people or 18 people, right? That's 2, 3, 2, 3, 12 is 17. So let's say that's what we're going for, right? Then 3 healers out of 17 should be like less than it's about right. So we have a pretty decent breakdown of of composition, as long as we have the right number of tanks and healers, which I think we do, unless we get like a lot more people or people fade out. And then but the problem seems to be that we lose some tanks going into Mythic Plus and we gain some healers, relatively speaking. And so we'll probably need to do some flexing or something to get enough breakdown for putting together the groups we need. But that's next expansion, so we'll worry about it then. Things to do outside of raid. The only consistent one was that 7 people said they wanted to PvP, and you guys are happy and free to do that. All right. So positive anonymous feedback. People felt like we killed Ny'alotha relatively quickly compared to the other end bosses, especially end of expansion bosses, because Argus last year took 100-something pulls, and that was miserable. And generally speaking, the whole tier, we seem to progress at a good pace and go smoothly. Critical feedback is always longer. Main thing was that a lot of time spent running and doing trash. It'd be nice to pull efficiently and be able to do bosses. Everyone.
There was also just a ton of trash.
There was a lot of trash.
Depending on the boss or like what we were doing, it seemed kind of excessive.
Yeah, and a lot of it respawned like between one night and the other night, so having to clear it twice sucked.
And then everybody should have the opportunity to play soccer. That was clearly addressed yesterday.
Love you guys.
So I'm glad we got to.
I hope you regret that comment.
Be glad I don't know where you live.
I'm happy we did it. And then we are still having trouble starting on time, and it's particularly important because we have East Coast people and we only have 2 hours, so we can't make the raid go later. But having enough time to clear stuff is important. Call outs should be more precise, so we have less panicky come heres or spread outs or come over there or don't be there, right? And then general DPS improvements, there was actually a pretty common thread for a couple people commenting on this. Just generally, would have liked for it to see more improvement and more numbers, more individual effort on class playstyle and research outside of just like raid strategy, and just being aware of individual performance.
That last one is just know your place.
Oh Jesus!
Know your fucking place.
It's a little. Ooh.
I copied it. I copied it over almost verbatim. So, but it's anonymous. All right. So next one. Would you like follow-up meeting? 19 out of 19 people said no.
Last time I put "Hey baby, you want to fuck," and then you asked me for a follow-up meeting. Like that was. I mean, that's your.
Called you
She's
out.
not making that mistake again.
Oh, there's a
Yeah.
follow-up meeting, all right.
Called your bluff.
Yeah.
So that was very consistent, and I appreciate that. So here's Raid Leaders Corner, our favorite section. First, our rate of progression this tier was pretty good statistically. You'll see the graphs later. And we were faster this tier, but I don't know how much easier or harder it was. In terms of rank, we were actually, we ended higher than we started. We were 4, 5, 6 on the early bosses, and then we got Realm first, Drestagath and Il'gynoth, and then we got third on Vex, Carapace, and N'Zoth.
I thought we were second on N'Zoth.
We're second on
no,
Horde.
We're
Meaningless.
third. We're third because there's a alliance guild.
Yeah,
Oh.
we were second Horde. And then comparatively to the previous tiers, we went from Uldir, it was 7, 4, 5, and 4, so we actually ended higher than we started, which was good.
Either
And
that or
then
fewer guilds are raiding on the server.
that's also possible, yes. Yeah, I didn't normalize for anything, which probably should. Maybe I'll do that in the future.
What kind of data compilation is this, JKM? Come on.
I put like most of this together at 4:30 a.m. yesterday.
Yeah, all right, that's fair.
But it was particularly bad raid for running and trash. I think we all noticed it the first day we zoned in. And that plus there were like 12 bosses, so we couldn't really do a one-day farm like we normally do, so it made it a little more annoying.
And the skip was also kind of
Yeah, the skip was also kind of useless.
Stupid skip.
Like if we get another raid like this, which they'll probably do it because they're morons. Like we do have to pick up the trash pace. Everybody has to be on the game and like
We might have to death skip and stuff and
Yeah.
not.
Well, we did some experimentation with larger polls, like pulling extra packs.
Yeah.
and seeing what we could
Backsheesh is
do.
calling for bloodlust all the time, man.
Like I want to see lusting on trash. I want to see cooldowns. Like it's good shit.
I mean, it's
And
absurd.
it makes it
amount of
less
trash.
boring as a healer too if we're pulling big, because then we have work to do, right? And just kind of.
I mean, we do only have like 2 hours, so we just have to like really give
yeah,
as
it's especially
much out of
important
it.
for us.
Yeah, like it just sucks that they decided to make like a raid of trash.
But it does mean more BOEs, I guess.
That's true.
Gotta farm those BOEs so Bixblurn can sell them.
Yeah, on a
Did it
different
sell
server.
yet?
I don't know. He hasn't told me. He wanted to be here. He said he just last minute said he had something come up. He couldn't come.
Oh well. But we'll see how trash is and how long the raids are next year. We might. I know, like last in Dazara lore, we tried the whole run past the Jaina Gauntlet thing, and that had about a 30% success rate, which wasn't great.
Well, that Jaina Gauntlet was bullshit.
But hopefully, it's just trash, and we can death skip that pretty easily, or do other things, right? Invis pots or other clever things. And then also, we actually comparatively needed very few pulls on the last few bosses, so we probably could have extended earlier if we just wanted to kill in a reasonable pace. But that was also difficult given how much farm there was, right, and how long we took to kill the earlier bosses.
Well, we also kind of
was also like, because there's so many bosses, it means that like everybody's best gear was on a different
it was spread out.
Whereas when you only have 7 bosses, it's a little more condensed. So we wanted to do more of the bosses more times.
Yep.
To get drops.
We also, there was also the problem of Thursday was only our only like real progression night, and so we wouldn't have like extended on and done like 2 days of Carapace and N'Zoth or something like that.
That's what I was going to say. Is this guild has a little bit different attitude than a lot of them. That people are pretty relaxed about stuff and not really pushing to be, server first and stuff. So as long as most of us are happy, that might actually be a question for the next tier survey. Is are you happy with doing farming and eventually getting around to the end bosses, or do we want to push as a guild and try for server first?
That's a good point.
So I think most of us are happy with what we've been doing.
Yeah. We did a lot of raw den.
Wanted
gotta
that
get those
trinket.
trinkets.
He dropped sick trinkets. To be fair.
It was mainly for you. Yeah, it's true. But that's also a consequence of the raid being so big and so long, right? We couldn't do all of the farm bosses in one night, so we had to kind of choose. Yeah, if the goal was to do it in the same roughly like earlier in the raid or earlier in the expansion, most of the end bosses took like 30 to 40 pulls for us. And so if we wanted to go at roughly that difficulty and pace, then we probably could have extended earlier if that was the goal, but that often isn't the goal. So we'll see. Any questions about that stuff? No? All right, so as a special feature, since this is the last tier of the expansion, we'll do a little retrospective on our journey through the tier.
You're going to be really upset if they put in like one of those one-room dragon bosses right before the next
We'll just
expansion.
ignore it. I definitely didn't do Hallian. Okay. So from our forum post, our core tenets and individual expectations, this was kind of what we, at the beginning of the expansion, what we said we wanted to focus on and expect of people. Generally speaking, I think we did well on most of them. And in terms of like time usage, we definitely did a lot better than last expansion. I'm sure it could still use improvement, but I think the general theme was our goal coming into this expansion was to fix a lot of the trouble we had last X-Pack, and I think we did accomplish that. So our raid team goals from our forum post, we wanted AOTC every tier. That was accomplished. Minimize downtime between pulls, again, compared to last expansion, was much better. Keeping voice chat clear and concise, despite issues, was still much better than last expansion. Clever ways to increase effectiveness, debatable how many opportunities there were for that, but I'm sure there could have been more. Starting on time and arriving early probably didn't happen as much as we originally would have liked. And I don't think people were that discouraged, but we did have some focus problems in some raids as things went on. For strategy and planning, we wanted to formulate strategies ahead of time. That was better than last year again, but I think we didn't have like concrete things that we wanted to try on each boss going in, so that could definitely use improvement. Planning boss order ahead, I think we did a good job with that. Moving discussions outside of raid, also much better than last expansion. And role leaders didn't really end up doing much, but we'll discuss that more later. So here's the other raid leader soapbox shaped corner. Like I've been saying, so generally compared to last X-Pack, we definitely improved organization and pace of progression and all the metrics that we cared about definitely improved by a lot compared to last expansion. So you should all be very happy about that. Some of the specific things that didn't really work out as well as we had hoped are listed, and we'll go through each of them individually. So for individual improvement, generally people said 4 or higher on their improvement every tier. And the progression speed definitely improved every raid, as you'll see in the graphs later. So we cleared the raids and we cleared bosses faster. But the individual DPS performance stayed fairly steady. If you look at this table, this is the median number of people who parsed in each color for all the bosses on the progression kills for each raid. So it's generally like there's some variance because we had some attendance changes from tier to tier, but there isn't like a very significant shift in performance overall. Oops. Sorry. And then
Spoilers.
And then also I had some ideas to do like outside of raid workshops and stuff for reviewing logs or going over strategy performance stuff, and that didn't happen because I'm lazy. So that's my bad. But if you're more interested, we have all the data for this table if you want to see how the parsing breaks down.
I was looking at that. Mine was definitely.
Oh, this
lower.
was also tanks and healer or tanks and DPS only. We didn't count healer parses.
Oh,
What?
Uh-oh.
mine was lower for Ny'alotha for sure.
And then voice chat clarity. I think there was every tier we kind of had the same comment that was like we start off, everybody's focused and fresh and good, and then as the weeks go on and we progress further and further into the raid, we kind of people start to lose focus and discipline. And I think that's to a certain degree unavoidable, but we can definitely focus on improving that. And then call outs being kind of inconsistent was also an ongoing complaint. So sometimes calling something out and sometimes not calling it out differently, getting your directions mixed up on Zanesh, and so on is definitely frustrating for people. And
We used
so
to have Rubidium do the call outs, but
yes,
he's not raiding with us now.
yeah, he left. He was the dedicated call out person,
Come
and
back, Ruby.
that was also exacerbated by the fact that we didn't really have role leads and we didn't have a concrete strategy for the boss, so people knew what to expect. It was kind of ad hoc, and so the callouts also ended up being ad hoc. And then sometimes the fun levels get too high, and need I remind you, the name of the raid group is No Fun Zone, so we can't allow that.
Fun will be punished.
And you were supposed to join if you hated the concept of fun. It's right there in the post. Anyways, moving on. Starting on time, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? We should start on time. And I think in previous tiers we did okay, like starting at 6:30 and clearing trash. But this tier was particularly bad because Rathian was right there when we zoned in, and so we needed everybody there like on time to start. Versus on previous tiers, we could probably like clear to the first boss while we waited for people to stream in. Strategy planning, I went back and looked through the Discord channel for strategy. It does seem like people participated a good bit, which was nice. But obviously would have been nice to have more content, especially ongoing. Like we have a lot of stuff that happens before a raid comes out. People post the guys they find, and during the beginning of the raid, people will post some stuff like weak auras and whatnot. But I feel like once we get going, a lot of the time the strategy adjustments and stuff don't really get discussed there. And we'll probably keep using that strategy channel for the main venue. I think it's been working pretty well and is better than any of the alternatives. And I'll put in some more effort to try to converge on one canon strategy that we'll do before each fight, just for the first few attempts, right? It can always change, but it's nice to know beforehand, right? If you're going to tank Savaro in the middle, or you're going to tank her on the edges and move along the room, or such and such. And then role leaders was kind of a mixed or poorly executed thing. This expansion really didn't end up contributing much to the success, and partially that was due to people leaving or switching. And part of it was because I think the role leaders were appointed against their will rather than volunteers, and so there wasn't that much initiative to really
Who
take
were the
advantage
role
of.
leaders?
I mean, we don't even remember, do we?
We had a really great role leader.
Oh.
Which one was it? Was it me?
It was you.
Oh, cool. I did do a good job.
You did.
What did you do?
Did you do the tank role lead? And
Yeah, I
then,
was the
then
tank
you
role
didn't
lead, yes.
tank
And then
came
she
and
left
healed.
And then I
and
left.
abandoned me. But you know,
But I was really good up until
What
that point.
will you do without her leadership, Breath?
apparently it'd slip on being 90% of the best role.
Yeah.
I
Be a
switched
goof.
from tanks to healers just because Tay and Kales had to heal just the two of them, like every Wednesday, and I thought
Oh,
that
don't
was
say
better.
it like that.
It wasn't everyone.
They probably love that.
No, it's just because I left the tanks.
I really don't know. If you inflate their ego, it's probably a bad idea.
So the goal with role leads was that the role leads would coordinate strategy and then allow individual people within their roles to compartmentalize just their own responsibilities and not really have to worry about the broader strategy. And I'm hoping that in the future, if we continue with this, right, you could delegate the role specific call outs to those people, and then you as your role know that you have to listen to your lead, but you can perhaps ignore some of the irrelevant ones from the other lead, right? And that kind of helps filter some of the chat traffic. And then also another idea that was proposed was, we could break out two separate, channels to discuss strategy before a fight instead of all talking over each other in one room at the beginning. So like for Raw Den, right, you could break out ranged into one room and they could discuss who's going to stand on what marker, and what that entails, right? And then melee could split out and talk about who's going to soak what in what order, and so on.
Yeah,
And then-
ironically, the role leader would have been more helpful after Rubidium stopped raiding.
Yeah.
Because I think it's difficult to replace like just one person calling out basically everything.
Mm-hmm. And then it doesn't even have to be per role, right? I think for Ny'alotha, we could have easily broken out into two rooms for each upstairs, downstairs team and talk about, here's the direction we're going for tentacles. Here's where we're going to go for the bashers upstairs, right? And here's how to deal with the mechanics downstairs and so on. So these having compartmentalized chat, I think, is something we might experiment with next expansion, just because I think that having everybody in one room and everybody has different things they care about and want to talk about, and talking over each other is usually not that effective in terms of using our time or getting the point across. Yeah, we'd probably put you all like tanks and healers in the same channel and say, go coordinate your externals.
You're talking about voice channel?
Yes.
Before the raid, as
Yeah,
like
Tay
a
is not
strategic
into that.
thing.
Well,
No, I just,
I
just
figured.
didn't know what you meant.
I would like to note that at least from a healing's perspective, the content isn't difficult enough in most cases where we even need to coordinate our cooldowns and externals.
But then when it becomes difficult, and
What's
you
an
need
external?
it really doesn't happen. I think that was the issue
Right.
with Coven, or not Coven, Conclave,
Oh,
where we
Coven.
needed healing we needed to coordinate,
Yes, we
healing
did.
cooldowns for
That was the one time
wins.
that was really important.
Or Zakul, you have to coordinate externals for the tank mind link, right? It's not every fight, but it's gonna be when it's
right.
relevant.
That was hard. That was a hard one.
When it's relevant, to break out and work that stuff out.
Conclave felt like one of the hardest fights in Desert Lore.
Okay, and then also I think it'd be useful to have rules because you can advocate for your role during strategy planning, right? You can say this mechanic is hard for melee or hard for range. Right? Here's the reason why, range can't move in and stack. Here's the reason why melee can't switch targets, so on. It'd be good to have that discussion happen at a smaller scale. I also think that in terms of breakout rooms, having the smaller group, people who don't feel comfortable speaking out in front of 20 people might feel more comfortable advocating for themselves with like 4 or 5. Anyway, all this is kind of moot if we don't have role leads, but we'll see who ends up being good candidates and how it works out. So any questions about the soapbox shaped corner? No.
Yes, one question. When are we going to institute a loot council? Just
No.
kidding.
Well, it's on the list of things.
I nominate Upper Decker.
I don't want to do it.
It would just be torture for her.
I mean, I'd occasionally want to have like offline role groups just to find out, like, what is Brasmus doing to, on these 500k DPS trash groups and so on, and how does Upper Decker get large numbers and stuff like that, because they have
I
techniques
often ask,
for playing
what the
for
hell
playing the same
is
class. Yeah.
Brasmus doing?
We got big peens.
Infinite stars.
But we
I don't have
definitely-
Twilight Death or Infinite Stars.
Damn it, Brasmus! Stop breaking my hopes and dreams.
we can definitely have add like Discord channels for like DPS discussion or like tank discussion or whatever. I think people can, and you can, even if you're not that role, right, you can pose a
I like
question to
that.
those people. You can say like, why can't I get dispelled healers in this particular
I mean,
point?
if you guys want to talk about specifically about DPS improvement, like I can help you with warrior DPS because that's what I know, and maybe a couple other classes. The biggest thing you need is you need to research people who play your class and spec and play it at high levels, and there's YouTube videos and things like that. Like that is the way to improve if that is something
Cam,
you're concerned about.
do you have the ability to add channels in
Yeah.
chat channels in
Yeah, I added like the raid strategy and stuff. So I can,
Okay, yeah, so I mean, we could, I think that's a good idea because, we 900 years ago, like when we first moved to Engine, we had some of that stuff, and like 3 people wrote a couple of things. Everyone's, on there, but that was the idea. Here's a class forums, and we had other kind of stuff. So if we wanted to put that in there, I think the Discord would be a good place to do it.
yeah. And in terms of
like-
resources, right, you could have something like, Larissa asks, like, how do I improve on Moonkin damage? And then somebody who's more familiar with not even the class, but like where to get that information
Yeah.
can be, oh, here's
I
the
mean,
top.
there's class discords I know for every class that have
Those are really
pretty good-
annoying to sift through, though.
I mean, they are pretty
They're
annoying,
really annoying.
and they're full of gamers, but like they do at least have some basic information.
Yeah, but maybe you can find like the links to the
Yeah.
canonical guides, right? But
Yeah.
then if you do
I like-
that and you can say, here's like the top balanced druid in the US, and here's that person's Twitch stream and that person's like loadout and Warcraft logs, and you can look at those resources.
Yeah, like I had never played Boomkin at all before this expansion, and in my previous guild at one point, I had one of the players that was an experienced Moonkin player got together, and we just stood at the target dummies and discussed techniques for weaving the rotation, stuff like that. So that was invaluable. Still took me probably 6 months to learn it, but maybe I'm slow.
But yeah, if there's a person
I've
of the
got a-
class in the raid, then definitely I think that's something you could go to your role lead for, even if they're not. The role lead ideally would be not necessarily an expert in every class, but like be tangentially, aware of what other classes are capable of doing and kind of get you started in the right direction.
Yeah.
But I think
trying to get my Volpera Mistweaver going, so I might need to talk to Kels at some point and find out how to
Also,
play Mistweaver decently.
do you guys know about WoW Analyzer? You can put your logs in there.
We've linked that a couple times. Yeah, we can
Okay.
definitely try. That's one of the things that I'd like to do in terms of the outside of raid workshops. Is
Yeah, that's a really good cool tool for coaching because it'll show you, oh, I'm not using all my cooldowns effectively, or my actions per minute isn't where it needs to be, or I stood enough bad and stuff like that.
Part of it is also kind of learning what your limitations are. Like someone mentioned, know what your relative place is in the raid. But
your place.
Well, I mean, I think
listen,
there
please.
may be people who are pulling a certain DPS number, but they don't have a damage meter, so they don't realize they're doing 20k less than the mid tier of the raid.
I mean, I assume everyone has a damage meter. I'm not, and I know we don't need to be like posting them. I don't want to be that kind of guild where like, look at your damage, but like you should know, if nothing else, not to just because to feel bad about it or whatever, but you don't know if you need to improve if you don't know what your actual numbers are. So
Anyway,
I
I
mean,
just
you
wanted to
should
say
get
two,
that.
I just want to say two things about that. One is earlier in expansion, I was really down on myself because I thought my numbers were shit, and they probably were. And I started looking at all the people that had much better numbers, and every single one of them had 3 Azurite pieces with streaking stars. And when I finally got that, lo and behold, my numbers went up about 20k. And the other thing is that I'm consistently parsing like at 33 or something, which seems pretty bad, but I discovered when I was playing for a while from my mom's house with 25 millisecond latency instead of 75, it made a gigantic difference. So a lot of, there are some things that we might not actually be doing wrong, but they, you feel bad because you're not doing well.
But these are
don't-
also things that you
don't
can analyze
worry.
from your log, right?
Yeah,
If we
don't
go
worry
through it.
about your parsing numbers necessarily, because one, a lot of classes are front loaded. So if they have shorter kill times, their parses are going to be a hell of a lot of time better. You have to look at kill times in the same area that your kill times are, and then look at what they are parsing.
That's interesting.
We
But
should
yeah.
have like a resource list, like
Mhm.
just a channel that's just like, here are all the websites we use, here's a link of Discord channels that are helpful, that doesn't necessarily have discussion in it, so we can just maintain the list of
a kind of
stuff that is
resource
helpful,
list.
so we
That's
can
a good
all
idea.
go back to it. Because I know, like, we mention this stuff like in chat, and then I will immediately forget the name of it and never go
Yeah.
there.
Well, I think I would just make the point that yes, like looking at specific numbers is important, but I would really just like to see people have kind of a goal to improve and to be sort of steadily working towards that, even if your numbers aren't great, but you manage to improve them by like 2k. If they're still not great, whatever, who cares? You're still improving. And I think it would just be nice to see kind of more of that kind of curiosity to see like, well, what can I do? What can I focus on? There are certain things that are outside of your control, like Larissa said, latency, but what is within your control and what can you change? And, is there like, if you're not pushing your buttons enough, like, okay, let's focus on one ability and try to just push that one button more and get it, get in the habit of that.
I think like what I'd like to see is just like people learning the basic like core concept of their class rotation. Like, like mine for instance is dumping as much rampages as I can in my actions per minute, like that kind of thing. Just understanding the general flow of your class. Now, if you can't execute it perfectly, I understand because of various things or whatever. But if you at least understand the goal you're supposed to be working towards, I think that'll help you in the long run. And I think reading guides and like watching people that are some YouTubers that are less annoying that just kind of go over the class in very basic terms of like what you're trying to accomplish with the class. Like I think that'll help people a lot if they just understand the core concept of the class and then they can work.
You also get good ideas for UIs when you're doing that too.
Yeah.
Which can be very helpful.
That all said, as a raid, I think we're doing really well.
I don't know. I think we could pull in our DPS a bit.
Well, we had the table, right, and we had the breakdown of how we're doing. I think there is like an overall rate DPS one, but that's also less useful. But I think in general we'll try to do more in terms of we'll have the channels definitely, and you should feel comfortable posting in there even if you have no idea where to start, right? And people can point you to resources, and we'll definitely put more effort into doing the one-on-one or one-on-many workshop sessions where we can like go in depth, and because reading logs is also an acquired skill, right? You have to know how to analyze them, what to look for, what how queries work and things like that. And it's not an easy thing to do and not something that you can just pick up by yourself without any guidance.
Where can we find those tables again?
You're super quiet, Gray Staff.
Where can we find those tables again with our numbers?
Oh, the numbers table.
He's gonna post it after. I think.
I'll post the full table
thing, yeah.
after.
Okay.
I'll post the slideshow after, but I can also give you the full breakdown per boss of how many of each we had.
Cool.
The other stupid thing in this particular tier also was the addition of corruptions, which hugely
Yes, that's true.
Corruption is very RNG.
Yeah.
But so like one of the skills of like reviewing logs is like, oh, how do I filter by people who have the same corruptions as me and of the same item level and of the same kill time? And then among these people, is there somebody who's still, despite those same limitations, succeeding? Right. And then what
like,
can I learn from that?
There's similar. I mean, we see similar. Like JKM showed that table that was from. It had Ny'alotha, but it also had EP, and it also had Battle for Dazzle lore in there. And
It's probably the same people.
Like it's just the same numbers. And like again, absolutely, the corruptions are ridiculous, and they should take these out as soon as they can.
How dare you?
But it's just like it is not just the corruptions. Like there's a common sort of performance, like people performing in different levels. And again, I'm not saying like I agree with the general gist that like if we kept going the same way, we're probably going to be just as successful, and that's great. But if we're talking about like actually wanting to improve, and it seemed like some people do, like I think the biggest thing that would help people is just again looking at some guides, just maybe understanding some stuff about the rotation that are maybe not clicking right now, because like that's I think the best way to learn your class is to just sort of like have the rotation explained to you in like a holistic way that's like this is what you're trying to do, like this if you're an arms warrior, you're trying to get a big testamite, you're trying to get as much haste as you can to spend as much raise so you get a big testamite. Like that kind of thing is the case for most classes that has a kind of like trick like that, and if you can learn that, I feel like it's going to help you in the long run. So if you guys do want to improve, I just really suggest going and doing some research.
And this is only really coming up because people consistently say every survey that they want to improve more, right? And they want to focus more on that. So if that's not your goal, that's absolutely fine. And we can be happy with that. But I think if you are wanting to try to improve your performance in the game, then we can definitely try to provide the resources to do that.
One thing I would like to point out is that I also think having a sim of you and your gear and your talent choices is really helpful for just bracketing like, okay, in a boss where I don't have to do anything, this is the maximum amount of damage that I can
And if you guys want help like using the sim program, and also you can even use my login, I have the login, like the max simulation login. Yeah, if you guys with the Greybots login, you want to help learning how to do that add-on and making the sims work and interpreting them and getting meaningful sims for yourself, I absolutely can help you do that. Like,
and be sure to put that in the.
Yeah, that can definitely go in discussion channels, right?
Yeah.
SimC and Raidbots.
Yes.
So cool. So we'll try to. In general, I just want to. I think people want to have this nebulous feeling of wanting to do better, but don't really know how to do it, and it seems like this, insurmountable big thing. You're just trying to learn this new language, basically. And so having the resources to be able to do that in a casual manner, right? Being able to do that in a casual manner would be helpful. And so we'll kind of focus on that next expansion. And also, like, all the class stuff is going to change next XPack, right? So there's not really much use of doing it now unless you really want to push something now. All right, moving on to progression data, my favorite part. So here's the general statistics for the raid. The most notable stuff, we took 2 months roughly to kill Ny'alotha, 64 days, about a week longer than Eternal Palace, but Ny'alotha also had 4 more bosses. It was like 12 versus 8, so we actually cleared per boss significantly quicker. We wiped more on Ny'alotha normal than we did on Ny'alotha heroic. It was 15 versus 19, which was interesting. Also, in general, the wipe counts were way lower, as you can see, compared to like Eternal Palace, Desire or Uldir. We had 30 to 40 wipes on a lot of the harder bosses, whereas for this raid we didn't have many at all. Let's see what else. In terms of item level, we were kind of in the same rough area. We ended each raid with a little more, little better gear than the raid dropped, by the same amount roughly. This one also, like, corruptions and stuff is going to throw off eye levels a lot, so who knows? But it's still a general trend that we generally kill the raid after outgearing it, which is fine. And then I added a row for our world rank for our heroic kills, and you can see that we did actually significantly improve from the beginning of the expansion. We were top 15k at the beginning, and we're top roughly 10k, 8k at the end. But this isn't normalized for the total number of people doing it, so maybe the number dropped off, and we're actually not better.
Yeah, only people better than us stopped reading.
Yeah, perhaps. So that's the statistics for that. Here's the progression graph. The green is heroic, red is normal, so you can see there's a lot more bosses in this tier than the previous ones. Black is Eternal Palace, and then the gray ones are the raids before that. So just comparing against Eternal Palace, you can see the flatter line means that we cleared faster. So the lines in general are pretty flat. We didn't have a lot of kind of wall bosses that we got stuck on for a long time. It looks like the longest one was N'alotha at the very end. The slope becomes the steepest right there. But in general, it was kind of mostly flat.
Well, because we could also choose our path as opposed to the other ones, which were like really linear.
No, I think the reason that happened is because we killed Carapace when we weren't expecting, and then we tried like one fucking pull.
Yeah.
On N'alotha once, so then it ended up being a long time before we got back to it, right?
And we were doing Thursday onlys, and we weren't extending Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, so it's based on like overtime.
It's just
okay.
time, yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, we did. We did like one N'alotha pull, and then we didn't do it for weeks. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, we were very casual about finishing.
But
off,
if you look at the time, like our time to clear heroic Ny'alotha was faster than our time to clear both Uldir and Desaralor, even though those were much shorter raids. All right. Here's the roster breakdowns, which are a little harder to tell, but you can see that generally speaking, we were actually pretty steady for both normal and heroic. There wasn't like a steep drop off at any point or very inconsistent attendance, which was nice. Some of the previous tiers, even though they started higher, had a lot of like oscillating up and down or some weird behaviors that make it less consistent, but that was nice to see. Oh, and now it's time for awards. Our superlatives.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
So first, of course, we have perfect attendance. We had more people with perfect attendance this tier than any tier so far.
Haha.
So congratulations to you 8 people who showed up for all the raids that I could find in logs, at least, because I wasn't here for some of them. I had to reference some of Kale's streams to see the others. But I think I got everybody who had perfect attendance.
Really important work to be done.
It is important. We have to appreciate, people who are here every day or every week. Maybe you can go look up this mixtape and listen to it. I haven't actually heard it. So next is, of course, the most valuable raider. And in a stunning result, Upper Decker's two back-to-back streak continues with the caveat that you were tied with Brasmus this tier.
Ooh.
It came down to the very end.
There can be only one.
Ooh.
It
Now you
was
have to fight to the
I-
death.
Look at
Pistols
the
at
look at
dawn.
the look at this
What
flyer.
is
I
this?
shouldn't
Look
have
at the
voted for you.
flyer.
I voted for you.
I voted for you, so it canceled out.
I canceled out. All right.
Anyway.
NVR.
You can get Canadian Coca-Cola products for $7.79.
Is that what came? Most valuable raider came out to this.
MVR cash
coupon?
and carry.
Cash. Wholesale.
Only pasta lasagna. Jesus. What is all this shit?
I just looked up MVR on image search and I found something interesting.
What a
That doesn't absolve you of your sins, JKM.
Oh my god. Thermoglow chafing fuel, 2.5 hours. Give me that shit.
Why is
gonna-
this in the...
I'm gonna need more than 2.5 hours.
Is that an entire prosciutto for $11?
That's what it
That's
looks
per
like.
kilogram.
Well, it's really $12. $11.99. It's really 12.
It's also might be Canadian. I'm not sure. Oh no, it's North
No, it's
York.
New
Is
York.
that America?
Yes.
North
York.
North York.
Yeah, I think that's in New York.
That could be anywhere.
It's got an
North
American
York.
phone number, so it's probably.
416. That's
Pennsylvania.
Toronto, I thought.
Is it?
Oh,
Oh, maybe you're
really?
wrong
So
then.
it is
This
Canadian.
is Canadian.
Oh well. Anyway, so congratulations. I don't know how the how back-to-backs are gonna work if you tied, but we can work that out later. So next is best transmog, and for some reason that went to Tay, even though I don't think his transmog
What?
has changed at all.
I changed it multiple times.
Oh, did you? I didn't notice.
Badass shaman sets number 6.
This week it's Sky Shatter in green. Next week it's Sky Shatter in brown.
So in
No, it's
celebration,
red, purple, gold. I
since you won,
I'm
I found a
picking Melissa.
shaman one.
Yeah, I don't
And
like
then
that. That's fine.
There was a three-way tie for second, but it was I think Tay was a clear number one in the voting.
That's really weird.
I like that
Who
that's one of
put Upper
each
Decker
one of
for the-
each
My
armor
fucking
type
cats
here
are the
represented.
best.
That's not a
Upper
transmog. It's
Decker
just
doesn't
a
even wear
nude.
clothes.
It's just naked.
That's why we like it.
Anyway, next is the Ballon d'Or for best at soccer. Goes to Brasmus, number one.
Oh boy.
Oh
Congratulations.
man.
And Bike Chen Bible and Costco Pizza tied for second.
You gotta feed
Costco pizza.
I am incredibly surprised that I'm on here.
I mean, it's pretty slim pickings. We're not gonna pick Bike
This is-
Chen.
This is just a list of everyone who did it.
So congratulations. We probably won't have a repeat of this award, but
Please God.
May it be left in the
Balón.
histories.
so next winner is fastest to run back after a wipe, which was Bike Chen.
Wait, what?
One.
think
You're
Is that
right.
Tiger's Lust?
The people have decided.
Me? Am I back? I guess I'm back pretty quick, but I think it's
We erased a decent amount.
What the fuck is this shit?
I know, that's what I was just reading. The comprehensive guide to winning your ex back.
Whatever you do, never run back to
Which
what
seems to conflict those two things, right?
Type the
Frank
the
Ocean.
award
Frank
in
Ocean.
Google.
Never run back to
Yeah.
what broke you, but win your ex back. Like, no.
I mean, this is how all these image searches work. As I type the name of the award into an image search, and then I turn the safe search off and see what comes up.
Oh no.
It's just based on like your Google knows about you, JKM.
Well, it's using DuckDuckGo, so hopefully it doesn't have any
Okay.
history.
Uh,
Okay. Next is what was it? Oh, most likely to die in the Il'gynoth pit jump. And it was
we knew you knew it was you.
Yes. Because it's just the one spike. And the thing
I
is,
know,
is
but
like the
you
first
landed
like
on it,
20
like,
times
9
we did
times.
it, I was fine, and then like suddenly I sucked at it.
well,
I
it's
don't
all
think
about
that's-
perception.
It's because
It's
we're
just
used to
consistent with what we know about you, Cal.
we're used to you
It's
falling off
used to
ledges.
falling off something. Yeah.
And I know JKM has died to that multiple
Just
times,
because it hasn't
including-
happened doesn't mean that it isn't likely.
including when he's trying to demonstrate how to do it properly. That's
Oh, that's when you're
that was
most
pretty
likely to
great.
die.
So we all failed to unfold our wings, unfortunately, but we won this
Well,
great award.
None of us are demon hunters.
Next is most likely to get in trouble breaking quarantine, and that is Bible number 1.
Okay, guys. Okay.
Wait a minute. What?
Just because I'm an unholy death knight and I spread
No.
virulent plague
And you kill people all the time.
Yeah, I
First
think
thing
it's
on
just
why.
that you're an ass, not that.
When have I ever endangered anyone else?
Every swap
raid.
blast is an endangerment.
Are you gaslighting us right now?
How many times
think
have I
he's
died,
trying to.
Bible? How many times?
Anyway, so congratulations. Next is worst loot luck, and in a pretty landslide victory,
Unsurprising.
Savage number 1.
Look at the squirrel!
Oh my god.
Maybe
so
he needs a
cute.
lucky squirrel scratcher coin.
I want a lucky squirrel scratcher coin.
It's seen on TV.
Signed by Squirrel Millionaire.
Changed my life.
What the fuck is this?
There's a Squirrel Millionaire. Can I
Squirrel
be
millionaire
friends?
Rick Wallace.
Rick
Come on.
Wallace.
This isn't real.
Everyone knows Squirrel millionaire Rick Wallace.
It's on the internet. It's real.
This. Oh Jesus Christ!
Oh my god.
What is this degenerate shit?
Don't say that about him. He's a very cute squirrel.
Funny things come up when you turn safe search off.
TLC.
Oh god, it was just all porn, most of it.
Anyway, so congratulations to Vash, even though he's not here. Next is, the person you'd most want to go on a game show with your life on the line. It seems it was a 3-way tie for first.
What?
I don't know who would trust DVE because DVE is a degenerate gambler.
That's
and
why I
would
just
gambled my life
100%
away.
gamble
That's
your
what
life away.
I was like thinking, like, it's hard for me to pick one, but I know it absolutely would not. It would not be Jake.
Please note that I put RIP me because I know that I would die if I had to depend on any of you to win a game show.
I love this
Some
photo.
people just
so
want to watch the
much.
world burn, you
Look
know?
at this photo. Look at this photo.
These kitchen items.
That's such an unbelievably
He doesn't know what a
difficult
hemisphere
question.
is.
A spatula.
Because he doesn't know what a hemisphere is.
Phone a friend.
I just don't know.
I like to phone a friend.
What does it mean?
This is why when I do
His
my
head is really the
you
answer.
should listen.
Oh man.
Anyway, next is the person you'd most want to speak at your hypothetical graduation. And that's number 1, Taymat.
It's literally
Odds are high.
impossible.
Only
I tried to
if
find a literally impossible quote, but
both
this is the
drunk
best I
and
could
or
do.
high.
I just thought he'd call somebody a cunt.
Both.
So congratulations. And then last is the person you'd most want to introduce to your family. And it seems there was a 2-way tie for first there. And a 3-way tie for second.
Look at this slide.
Who would pick DVE?
Serial killers, families of serial
Yeah.
killers.
The vagabonds he picks up.
Here's the serial killer I know.
We
Hey,
love
Mom.
you, JKM.
You just
Hey,
have to
Mom.
hide the gambling problem.
Hey
I
mom,
just
I
have to-
found home Zodiac.
I just have to videotape all your answers.
For this one, I put that you guys already all know my family since you all know my mom, basically.
We do.
Yeah.
So you have no choice in this matter.
So I
For
have no
you.
choice. What's done is done. It's already happened.
The damage has been done.
It's too late for me.
So
Oh my
that's
God,
all
what
of
is
them.
This? What is this quote?
I found it online.
You can tape record them right down. Best of all, in all
Video-
caps, videotape them.
I
This sounds,
I
this
don't want
sounds
to know the
vaguely
context of this.
threatening.
What the hell?
Someone
I
just
worked very hard to find these
aggressively-
images.
aggressively wants to meet people, and this is the advice they got.
Videotape them.
Best of
secretly.
all.
So that's the end. So congratulations on a successful expansion. Oh, in terms of the schedule stuff, a lot of people did respond that they're either going to let game time lapse or step back or et cetera, et cetera. So we will probably do achievements because most people said they wanted to do those. We'll probably do those on Thursdays since that's when people are available, and we'll probably just cut out Wednesdays. And then Mythic Plus, as mentioned earlier, we'll just kind of taper off however it does. and then I'll put the achievement invites on the calendar today. So make sure if you, and I'll only invite the people who said they wanted, yes, in game, and I'll only invite the people who said they wanted their attendance to be considered. I'll go ahead and test out Wednesdays too. I'll put one for Wednesdays too, just in case everybody's here, and just accept if you're available that day, and we will go on the days that people are available. But other than that, I'm not planning any additional raid stuff. If you guys want to try Mythic, you're welcome to attempt to coordinate something and try to put together 20 people with the entire guild or with other guilds. But there's not going to be any official stuff for that. Any other questions?
No, thank you for doing
No.
this.
Yeah, I think you did a good job, JKM.
Well, we will also we'll probably do a preliminary pre-X-Pack survey once the expansion comes out and stuff, just to get a better idea of what people are actually playing and what they want to do and stuff. But until then, we'll probably just take a break and do chill things. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for attending.
So sorry, what were you saying about achievements?
I'm gonna send out calendar invites for the people who said that they wanted their attendance to be required, and so make sure you accept those in game for the days that you can be there.
So you're planning on doing those on raid nights?
Thursdays,
Thursday?
yes.
Thursday.
Usually Thursdays, probably because that's when people are here most of the time. But I'll put the invites out for Wednesdays too, in case we have all the necessary people on Wednesdays. I forgot to write down notes.
I have many lucky doos you like. Good fortune to
JKM.
our friends.
You already go. He just
Good
immediately
books it.